The fascinating world that preceded our own is the subject which I would like to talk to you about today. Welcome to Worldwide Wisdom. The world, the way we see it, is so much more than meets the eye. Chassidus reveals to us that the world we live in is actually the second edition from God Almighty's creation. When God created this world, He actually created a world that was before our own. The world we live in is a world called the world of Tikun, which is the world of order. You may have heard of the word Tikun from Tikun Olam, like fixing the world, a term that has been bastardized to mean marching with left-wing groups. Unfortunately, it's been bastardized. But really what Tikkun Olam means, we'll see in a few moments. This is what we're going to really be talking about today. The term Tikkun, the world that we live in, is the world of order, and the world that preceded us is the world of Tohu, which is the world of chaos. It's important for us to be able to understand the difference between these two worlds so that we can understand our purpose in this world. This is all taught to us in Chassidus. Today is a very special day in the Jewish calendar. It's the second day of the month of Iyar. It's the birthday of the Rebbe Maharash, the fourth Chabad Rebbe, whose motto in life was Lechatchila Ariber, a priori, over the top. A priori, you're not intimidated by your struggles. You're not intimidated by your obstacles. You're not fearful of your challenges. You ride right over them because you are imbued with divine awareness and divine consciousness. Nothing phases you. This is the mindset, the movement, the revolution of the Rebbe Maharash. Imagine tapping into that kind of energy and living your life without fear and without intimidation, fully focused on your purpose. So let's talk about our purpose. Chassidus teaches us, actually it's, yesterday was the Yortzeit, or 2 days ago was the Yortzeit of Reb Chaim Vital, who was the foremost disciple of the Arizal. The Arizal was perhaps the greatest Kabbalist of the past millennium. Is that how you said? Millennium is 1 millennium, 1,000 years. He's probably the greatest Kabbalist of the past millennium. The Arizal was the student of Reb Moshe Cordovero, and he was the teacher of Reb Chaim Vital, though he taught only 2 years in the city of Tzfat. In those 2 years that he taught, Tzfat forevermore became known as the city of mysticism. Because of the 2 years that the Arizal revealed non-stop wisdom of divine mysticism to the world, and actually that became the foundation of the Chabad movement, because it's the 2 years of teachings of the Arizal that were written down by his student and disciple Reb Chaim Vital. He was actually born in Tzfas, Reb Chaim Vital, that we now have been able to establish the Chabad movement, which is the elaboration of the teachings of the Arizal in a manner that is comprehensible. The word Chabad means rational, means logical, to be able to take those teachings that are so mystical and hard to understand and to apply them in a way that we can understand and appreciate in our daily lives, making them more meaningful. So that's what we can talk about today. Rabbi Shneur Zalman of the Adi was the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad. He was born in 1745. So he was the one that brilliantly managed to establish the movement of Chabad, which was the mindset, the courage to be able to take the teachings of Jewish mysticism, which heretofore were abstract, aloof, and very difficult to comprehend. And he said, we're going to make them rationally understood. This was such a revolution that you may recall that the Alter Rebbe was imprisoned for 53 days, and his teachers appeared to him. His teachers, the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid of Mezrich, appeared to him from the next world. They came to him, and they revealed, and they said that the reason you're in jail is because is not because the communists threw you in jail, or because somebody slandered against you that you were supporting the Turks, the Ottoman Empire in Israel, with charity to Israel. That wasn't the real reason. The real reason is because in heaven they are deeply concerned that the wisdom of mysticism, of Jewish mysticism, should not reach the minds of the rational comprehension of mortals. It's too much. You're pushing the envelope. They want to curb your efforts. And the Alter Rebbe asked, what should I do about it? So they told him, just keep it up. We'll fight for you. And indeed, he was released after 53 days. The 53 days correspond to the 53 chapters of the book of Tanya, which is his magnus opus. which really solidified the teachings of Jewish mysticism into a manner which is comprehensible and rationally understood, and thus he became the founder of the Chabad movement. Arizal, of course, wasn't in the Chabad movement. He was just teaching the wisdom of Kabbalah, but it was still ethereal. Right? Anyways, so what are these two worlds? The worlds of Tikun. We know the world of Tikun, but what's the world of Tohu? I'm going to try to explain this in the following way. So everything that we encounter has a body and a soul, software and hardware. I mean, look at a human being. He's got a body and he's got a soul, right? You know, it's interesting. I was taking a walk with my son last night, and we were walking on the country club, and we noticed people in their 80s playing marbles. Marbles. You know what marbles are? I mean, they call it bocce. They call it bocce or something. And I said to my son, I used to do that when I was 4, 5, 6 years old. And now they're in their 80s, they're in their 90s, and this is what they're doing. They're playing marbles. Bigger marbles. Moves a little slower, but they're playing marbles. And I explained to my son that, it's interesting that you can see what a person's values are based upon what they do in their free time. So when you finally retire, when you have nothing forcing you to do anything, it's interesting to see what a person lives for. There was another very interesting article in the New York Times yesterday about a revolution amongst American men that are pushing themselves to wake up ever earlier in the morning. The successful American CEO will wake up even earlier. There's some, 4 o'clock in the morning. There's some, maybe call him an influencer. I don't know what he is, but he's some guy in Miami that made a video of himself at 3:57 is brushing his teeth, and at 4:01 he's doing push-ups on the balcony, and he's drinking his water, he's dipping his face in lemon ice water and wiping bananas all over his face, whatever he was doing. But I was watching his morning routine. I'm like, what are you going to do at 4 a.m.? You know what he was doing? He was not doing his emails, sir. What he was doing was taking care of his body. There was a few moments that he was doing a little writing, a little emotional journaling, and it was impressive to see. But it was a main focus on his body. Now, there are people that will focus on their soul, right? Whether it's journaling, whether it's meditation. I think he was doing a little meditation. In fact, now that I remember. The question is, how much emphasis do you put on your body and how much emphasis do you put on your soul, which is your feelings, your aspirations, your thoughts, your meditations, right? So we are made up of a body and a soul. Your phone has hardware and has software. Your business, think about your business. There's the SOPs of your business, and then there's the mission statement of your business, and they're two totally different things. The SOPs are the standard operating procedures, right? But then there's the purpose, the mission, the goal, right, of your organization or your company or your business, and one is the soul and one is the body, right? Very, very important to understand the mission statement. If the mission statement changes, it could easily modify the SOPs, right? Because what's the goal? Is the goal to make money at any cost, or is the goal to put poor people in homes, or is the goal to empower the less fortunate? It's a slight variance that can make all the difference, right? As to the mindset of the business, right? So the body will change according to the soul. The hardware will modify based on the software, right? So when it comes to, think about a kid who's graduating high school, and he's got to think about what kind of profession he wants to go into. So the kid has got to think about, what does my soul want to do? What does my soul enjoy? Am I artistic? Am I more entrepreneurial? Am I more of a person who likes to follow the rules? Am I a person that likes to innovate and create? Am I a person that likes to just, apply? I remember when I was in Japan, I met the Japanese. I interviewed them, and it was very interesting to me that the Japanese are very, very good at executing instructions, but they're not very good at being creative. They're just not. So Panasonic, which is based in Osaka in Japan, would bring 20 Israeli engineers to work full-time in Osaka as the creative brains behind Panasonic, so that the Japanese would be able to execute, right? Would be able to execute. So imagine it was the other way around. Imagine if the Japanese were creating and the Israelis were executing. Forget about it, right?
Never happened.
That would never happen, right? You'd have
I know that.
yeah. Somebody said recently that what's the difference between heaven and hell? Heaven is where the police are British, the engineers are German, the lovers are Italian, the organizers are Swiss, and the cooks are French. It's heaven. You know what hell is? Hell is when the police are German, the organizers are Italian, the lovers are Swiss, the cooks are British, and the engineers are French, right? Think about it. So you've got your personality traits, you've got your soul, and you've got to figure where you want to channel that soul, right? Which business, which college, which training, which whatever you're going to want to channel yourself into, right? So what happens when you have an idea? So let's say you got a person who's running a company. Let's say the CEO is a visionary that has no grounding in reality, right? We're going to publish 25 million books. Right? Visionary. We're going to change the world. It's going to be amazing. But there's no plan. Like, what are you going to write in the book? Doesn't matter. You got all, what do they call, all hat and no cattle, right? He's got full of ideas, bursting with ideas. It's inspiration, but there's no plan, right? So the plan would be the SOPs, would be the body, right? So you got a soul that's fully focused on the soul with no emphasis on the body. Then what's going to happen? You're probably going to go bankrupt relatively quickly, right? On the flip side, when you have an idea, when you have a company which is at play, let's say you inherit a company. Somebody told me yesterday that he inherited a company that he didn't like. His father told him, "This business, I'm giving it to you, whether you like it or not. You don't want it, it's gonna die." And the guy had no interest or knowledge about how to run this particular company. So what he did is that he told me that he learned how to do the business, and he learned how to make money in the business, right? And he's okay with it, but it wouldn't bother him too much if the thing kind of died, right? So you got two contrasts. The first case is the 25 million books. You got all vision and no plan. On the other side, you got a plan, but he's got no vision. I got like no particular interest in this, right? And these are the two worlds of Tohu and Tikun. The world of Tohu is where there was all vision and no plan. And therefore, what happened was the train crashed. It's called the explosion of the vessels. It's a world that was unable to continue. It was too intense light for the vessels to contain, right? And that world exploded. Then God created a second world, which was the world where the vessels were able to contain the lights. In other words, the lights were tempered. The energy was tempered for the vessels to be able to contain them. It's a world. So if the first world is a world of intense passion, the second world is a world of control and balance, right? You see the difference, right? Now, why is this important? It's important to understand that the first world, that, normally when you write a book and let's say the first manuscript was bad, what would you do? You don't talk about the first manuscript. You just dump it in the garbage and you move on, right? If you try to open a business and it failed, and then you open another business and it succeeded, you don't constantly talk about the first business. You try to delete that from your memory, right? So if God created a first world that failed, then why does Kabbalah tell us about it? Like, why do we need to know that God made a mistake? Like, what's going on here? The answer is God didn't make a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. It was all part of the plan. There was a world of intense passion which crashed, which was then followed by a world of tempered and balanced, of balanced intensity that was able to correct the previous world. This manifests in the way that we live our lives. Let me give you an example. So we live our lives in a way where we're born and we have not one but two souls. We have two conflicting energies within us. These are the energies of the godly soul and the animal soul, right? It's the energies of the Tohu and Tikun at play. Which comes first into the human being? The animal soul comes up even before birth. You got an animal soul. From conception, or 40 days before conception, or 40 days after conception, you've got an animal soul is already there. When does the godly soul come? late to the party.
Oh, the bris.
It starts at the bris. The godly soul starts at the bris. When he waddles his way in, right? 13 years later, at the bar and bas mitzvah, that's when the godly soul finishes coming in. And the animal soul is like, hello, who do you think you are?
Yeah, I've been here.
This is my territory, my
I
turf.
don't made,
Right? My turf, like don't mess, you know? So this is a conflicting energy within us. What we learn from the world of Tohu preceding the world of Tikun, we learn what was wrong with Tohu. Was Tohu evil? No. It was just misguided. The energy was undirected. It was unchanneled, and therefore it manifests in a way that crashed. Let me give you a very, very practical example of this, okay? I'm sorry if the subjects are a little bit ethereal, but bear with me. We'll try to work our way through this, okay? So I'll give you a very practical and personal example. So if you're a human being, you probably have experienced a situation in your life that was difficult for you to process. Whether it was a one-time life-threatening experience, maybe a car accident, maybe somebody scared the living daylights out of you, maybe it was some sort of a sexual trauma, maybe it was a war, maybe it was some cataclysmic event in your life, or could be other, maybe smaller events in your life, like maybe you were shamed by your siblings or your parents. And it's not like a big trauma, but if it's consistent, it's what's called complex PTSD. It actually becomes a trauma, right? It becomes a trauma. So whether you had a one-time cataclysmic trauma or small, tiny little traumas that are consistently repeated, what happens is that the body naturally tries to protect itself and doesn't want to have to endure these challenges again. So you got something in your brain called the amygdala, and the amygdala is scanning yourself for challenge, for struggle, for danger, right? So what happens is if the amygdala experiences a recurring of that situation, then for reasons which the conscious mind cannot explain, you will react in a ferocious manner. There was a kid I was reading about there was a man, I think, who reacted terribly to his wife. He would become very aggressive to his wife. And he couldn't understand what he was doing. So in therapy, they discovered that he had been molested by maybe a woman, I don't remember exact details, and that the woman wore that same exact perfume. That when his wife wore that perfume or that whatever, right, that's when he was just triggered, right? So what happens here is this is unfortunate. It's trauma. It's trapped emotion. It's trauma. Now, through proper therapy and mindfulness and meditation, we hopefully are able to reach a state where we can manage this trauma and in fact use that trauma to be able to become more conscious and more mindful human beings. In today's Hayom Yom, the song of the day, today's Wednesday, right? It says like this. Ashrei HaGever Asher Tiasrenu Kal Mitorascha Talamdenu was in the song of the day today. This one comes from Psalms 95. It says, let me translate this exactly. Fortunate is the man whom you chastise, O Lord, and instruct him in your Torah, bestowing upon him tranquility in times of adversity until the pit is dug for the wicked. What this means is that fortunate is the man who learns from his adversity. Without the struggle, without the opposition, you would never become the person that you've become, right? In other words, there's two ways of looking at trauma. You can look at trauma as a curse, or you can look at trauma as a profound educational experience. You know, Dr. Edith Eger, who's one of the most famous survivors of Auschwitz, she became a psychologist after Auschwitz and became a brilliant marriage therapist. She's like 90-something years old in California, but she wrote a book called The Choice, which is amazing. And she says that Auschwitz, only a Holocaust survivor could say this, Auschwitz
Don't say this to Rob.
was her greatest classroom. That's what she says. She says Auschwitz was her greatest classroom. What this woman managed to do was to take the traumas of her World War Holocaust experience and to channel it into learning about human psychology, learning about herself, learning about relationships, learning about meaning and purpose in life. You know, Viktor Frankl did the same thing with logotherapy, where Tohu, chaos, is reinterpreted from chaos as misguided passion. And if you're able to redirect the passion and apply it into a proper vessel, now you're taking the power of the bull, the power of the horse, the wilde chaya animal, and you put a yoke on it, and now you're going to be able to be far more successful, be able to reach far further than you could have on your own. Are you following my line of logic here? So, for example, you have the guy that's trying to print the 25 million books, right? And you say to him, listen, you're not a bad guy. You're a good guy. We love your vision. However, we're going to introduce you to a business coach. And this business coach is going to channel your inspiration into action, into a plan of action that's actually hopefully going to make a difference. And now what you're doing is, instead of canceling the visionary, you're saying, no, we're good. We like your vision. It's great. We're just going to focus it into the right direction for the proper impact. So instead of canceling Tohu, we need to redirect it. And that, by the way, just to finish this point, is the purpose of what we're doing in this world. Our purpose is to correct the misguided passion of Tohu, which means the animal soul preceded the godly soul, so that the godly soul can show up and refocus or redirect the animal soul that preceded it. Which is why you'll often find that there's chaos and trauma in our lives, not because God hates us, not because God is trying to hurt us, he's sadist, sadistic, masochist, something like that. No, the traumas we experience are there because God wants us to refocus them, to redirect them, so that they can become profound opportunities for elevation, for growth, for awareness that otherwise we never would have reached. And that's what I'm going to tie up together in a moment. Yes, Velva, what are you going to say?
That book and author.
The Choice by Edith Eger, a fascinating book.
Too late for you. What are you worried about?
Okay, somebody's saying to me something, not to be offensive, I own your world right now. Learn the names. I'm not sure what you're talking about, man. Edith Eger, Eger. Yeah, we actually had her as a guest from on our Zoom, on our YouTube channel. If you want to see how we interviewed her during COVID, go to our YouTube channel and search her on the Chabad channel. Rochelle is from Malta. Nice to meet you, Rochelle. I've got a question for you. If you could send me an email to rabbi@jewishgardens.com. That's rabbi@jewishgardens.com. Thank you. Okay, so let's now apply this wisdom into our mimer. Okay, let me give you the general context before we tie it up inside the text. We're learning the mimer of Hanukkah. And in this mimer of Hanukkah, we asked a profound question, a brilliant question at the beginning, which is why are we doing this mitzvah at nighttime? All the other mitzvahs you do in the daytime. You know, the Hanukkah lights were commemorated in order to make up for the menorah candelabra in the temple. When was the menorah candelabra lit in the temple? In the daytime. So why are we lighting the Hanukkah lights in the nighttime? Why would we be doing any mitzvah in the nighttime? Nighttime is a time of spiritual darkness. Why would we be doing Hanukkah lights in the dark? We should be doing Hanukkah lights in the day. Or most mitzvahs apply in the daytime. So why are we doing this mitzvah in the nighttime? And the answer we've been given through this amazing construct is that the purpose of the Hanukkah lights is not merely to bring holiness to the light as much as it is to bring holiness to the dark, to transform the dysfunction into function. And we're going to apply this now to transform the tohu into tikkun, right? To transform chaos into order. And this is the true meaning of tikkun olam. Tikkun olam means to repair the world. What that means is, tikkun olam doesn't mean that you help necessarily, doesn't necessarily mean that you help an old lady cross the street. It could also mean that. It certainly does not mean that you're marching with Black Lives Matter or that you're marching with Free Palestine, right? That certainly is not what I mean. That's a bastardization of what it could possibly mean. Tikkun olam means to take the chaos in your life and to refocus it. That's what it means. To take the animal soul, which has an addiction, to understand the root of that addiction, to go down dark and dirty to the very root of that addiction, to understand where it came from. And that could be through various kinds of therapy, Torah guided therapies. That you should get a therapist who's a Torah Torah observant, guys. I'm urging you, please get a therapist that's Torah observant, because it's going to make a profound difference, or at least someone who's very sensitive to Torah values. Because otherwise, I've seen therapists just destroy families in the most awful way. There are good therapists and there's not good therapists. And if you're able to identify the core of that addiction, or the core of that people pleasing, or the core of that codependency, and you're able to go down dark and dirty to the very core and to work through it, it's then that you're able to actually rechannel that trauma into making you a more sensitized, more conscious, and more aware human being, a more perceptive and aware Jew. So I'll give a very practical example. So you have someone who, let's say is a workaholic. Why is he a workaholic? The workaholic is that he can't not work. And then through working on himself, inner work, he discovers that the reason he's a workaholic is because his mother is running away from something. He's running away from something. That's why he's anesthetizing, because he cannot spend time by himself. Somebody told me yesterday that he cannot spend time by himself. He cannot go on a cruise. He's got to constantly be doing something, because on a cruise, he's stuck to a spot and he can't be constantly doing other things. And I said to him, I think you might be running away from something. Be careful. Think about that. Think about whether you're running away from something when you tell me that you can't go on a cruise, that you can't be rooted to the spot for a little while. Relax, right? So the person's a workaholic, and could it be that he's running away from something? What could he be running away from? Perhaps he's running away from from parents who refuse to give him compliments. I met someone recently who told me that his father said at his bar mitzvah, his father blessed him at his bar mitzvah speech, that you should grow up to be worthy of my love.
Oh my goodness.
True story. True story. You should grow up to be worthy of my love. And I'm like, I was horrified. Horrified. Have you ever heard of unconditional love? I love you because of who you are. No. I only love you when you achieve a B plus or an A minus average. Actually, no, make it an A plus average, right? I mean, what do you expect from this kid? This poor child was too young to be able to process what was going on, to be able to understand that this parent was abusive. To say to him, I will only love you when you conform to my standards, when you make me proud, right? So what this kid grows up to become is a workaholic, an overachiever who's afraid of failure, because this is the kind of guy, when he loses his money, he's going to commit suicide. He's going to commit suicide. He's in danger of suicide, because if he loses his money, then he's now has no worth.
No value.
He's got no value at all. So now what happens? You look at this person. Now this is total chaos. This is total tohu. This is total tohu. He's got more lights than his vessels were able to process. His young little mind at 4 or 5 or 13 years old was unable to process the fact that his parent was backward. His parent was upside down. His parent was abusive, right? The vessel wasn't able to process the light. So what happened? The light was too intense. So he just broke the vessel, right? And he became a people pleaser, right? Or a workaholic. Instead of saying, Dad, I am not going to stand up for this. I'm not going to stand for this. And I am going to stand up for this behavior. So now what does he do? Let's say he works through this trauma. And what he does is, with this trauma, he comes to the conclusion that he is struggling with a shattered sense of self-esteem. Okay? So if he's struggling with a shattered sense of self-esteem, now imagine if what he does is that instead of trying to anesthetize that pain, that void, with workaholicism, is that the word, workaholicism? I guess it's a word.
Being a workaholic.
Yeah. And instead of trying to block that pain through affluence, what he does is that he decides to go to shul, and he meets with his rabbi, and he learns Chassidus, and he learns about the fact that he has within him a soul which is a piece of God, and he meditates upon the fact that his soul is a piece of God, and that God has chosen to place a piece of his essence inside of him. So instead of finding validation from his father, who Nebuch, was probably abused by his own father, who already told him in his bar mitzvah that may you grow up to be worthy of my love. Instead of that, what happens now is that he finds a sense of value through his truth, through his soul. And now he decides to come to shul to exercise the soul. He lays tefillin and he davens. And when he davens, he reads the words of prayer where he validates himself. He says, God is great. God is awesome. God is almighty. And that almighty God, for some reason that I don't understand, chose to put a piece of his essence inside of me. He didn't do that in the earthworm. He didn't do that in the Grand Canyon. He didn't do that in Mount Fuji. He didn't do that anywhere. Where did he put his essence? In me and in 15, 20 million other human beings upon the face of this earth, out of billions and billions of people and countless trillions of creations. Wow. And now what he does is that he's going back to the root. And he's correcting the brokenness of chaos, of tohu, channeling it into tikkun. So now, instead of working, Rabbi, I don't have time to take a phone call because I'm in a rat race. I don't know who I'm running away from, but I'm running. He stops. And he says, Rabbi, I need to take your call. I need to talk to you. And he's facing his demon. And whilst he faces his demon, the rabbi is able to bring him to face his core, to be able to deal with the core of the issue instead of constantly trying to run away from it. And when he does that, he's now corrected his tohu into tikkun. This is why we're in this world, to do tikkun olam. We have to, it's not a question of if you have some imperfection within you. The question is which one. So when you walk around, you see these people that seem to have everything perfect in their lives, like that guy that got up at 4 a.m., right? Everything seems perfect. He's ripped. Is that the word? He's ripped. And he's exercising. And who else puts banana on their face? I didn't even thought of putting a banana on my face because I don't know what he's doing. And he's dipping his face in an ice bath of lemons or something. And I don't even know what I don't even know about living a perfect life. You think people have perfect lives? Nobody's got a perfect life. Everybody's got problems. Every person you meet is fighting a battle that you know nothing about. It's not whether you have a problem. The question is which problem you have and whether you've had the courage to face it yet. That's what's going on. And when you find peace on a Friday night, Shabbos is a time of tranquility. Shabbos is a time of rest. But how do you find rest? Rest is not the result of running away from your problems. Rest doesn't happen when you close the office and you close your phone and you enter into Shabbos. No, that's not what rest is. Rest is not the absence of work. Rest is when on a Friday night, during L'Chadodi, we turn around. And instead of running away from the 6 days of the week, we face them. And we say, I am who I am today only because of the struggles of the week. I am who I am only because of the abuses and the traumas and the challenges and the failures of my past. And now those are the ones that I face, because when I can face them, when I have the courage to deal with them and find their root, that's when I'm able to proceed into Shabbos in a state of peace. Let's take a look at this idea inside of the text. I'm sorry for having elaborated. Let's take it just a little bit of look up here. We'll do one paragraph. Page 231. So what we spoke about so far is we explained that the word shuk, we said you're supposed to light the Hanukkah lights until the marketplace, until the what's it called? Till the feet of the scavengers are no longer in the marketplace. So on a very literal level, that means you're allowed to light the Hanukkah lights until, I don't know, like 2-3 o'clock in the morning, when the scavengers are no longer in the marketplace. But Chassidus interprets it to mean like this. We've said so far that the word shuk, market, has two meanings. One is a place of chaos, which is a place of multiplicity and plurality, a place of chaos. And another word of shuk we said was pleasure, divine pleasure, right? So we said that the purpose was they have to transform the multiplicity and the chaos into focus. Tikun, so Tohu and Tikun. We're going to say the same thing over here with the word feet. The word feet can mean, on a literal level, it means the feet of the rebels. On a spiritual level, it means the 3 pilgrimage festivals, which are called regal. Feet. The 3 pilgrimage festivals, which are times of divine awareness. Let's take a look. In the previous section, the Rebbe explained the connection between the 2 explanations of the word shuk. Based on what we just learned, we're unable to understand the connection between the 2 explanations of the word regel, leg, or foot as well. The first explanation of regel, of the feet of the rebels that are collecting, the collectors of the marketplace, the scavengers. The first explanation of regel was that it refers to the forces of the Sitra Achra, of the forces of impurity, the feet of the Talmudai. And the second was that it refers to the Shalosh Regalim, the 3 festivals of Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, literally the 3 feet. So there's 2 ways to interpret the word feet. One is in a negative way, rebels. A second way is in a positive way, which is the 3 festivals. The connection between these 2 seemingly opposite explanations is that the refinement and elevation of the sparks of godliness that are in exile within the klipos, the concept of bringing about the intense longing for godliness within the Talmud is explained in the previous section. The ability to elevate the unholy is done through the service of the 3 festivals of Pesach, Sukkot, and Shavuot, which means that you're not supposed to run away from unholiness, you're supposed to transform it. You're not supposed to run away from chaos, you're supposed to have the courage to face it and to redirect it. The Rebbe explains the deeper meaning of the three festivals. Chassidus explains that the main difference between the worlds of Tohu, which is the source of the Klippos, and Tikun, the source of holiness, is that the world of Tohu, in the world of Tohu, the spheres are arranged in 2 columns, while in the world of Tikun, they are arranged in 3 columns. What does it mean 2 columns? This might take a little more time. I'm going to save this for tomorrow. We just touched on the word of Tohu and Tikun, but the point being that don't run away from your problems. The purpose of your problems is that they should be transformed into light. Night needs to be transformed into light. Chaos needs to be transformed into order. And when we do that, we will have fulfilled that purpose in this world. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Shkaya, have a great day. Wow, that was